Hey y'all, Space Dad here. Processing your feedback while in the middle of development is a monumental task. It's no secret that the Star Citizen community has no shortage of opinions, and your tireless efforts in testing the persistent universe at all levels from Evocati to PTU to even our live alpha environment requires multiple initiatives to ensure that valuable feedback is properly received. Whether that's the developers themselves spending their time in Spectrum, Reddit, Twitch, and YouTube, to our growing community team and the likes of Ulf, Jake, Tamara, Christian, and more. Whew. As part of our continuing efforts to shine our proverbial spotlight on those folks who don't often get seen or heard from in traditional game dev spaces, we're changing up our origin story format this week to take a look at an entire team who outside of Evocati, folks may not even know exists, whose efforts, much like those that we've just mentioned, is dedicated to collecting, processing, interpreting, and especially testing that feedback before passing it along to our developers for any potential action. So allow us to formally introduce you to the player experience team.
In player experience, we're basically one of the many voices of the players.
The reason why a player experience team matters
the most, because not compared to other teams.
Player experience actually takes the feedback from the community, actually understands the bugs that the live environment is facing.
And we'll use those to make the game better.
A day in the life of player experience team is
all over the place, actually.
Sorry, I have to laugh.
We almost don't know exactly what we're going to be doing that day.
We're kind of like the late crew here.
We start our day at 2 p.m.
To be able to play alongside players when these builds go out.
Beyond there, our day can exist from reviewing features that are upcoming.
We go to the issue council, we check to see what bugs have been reported in the latest builds.
One of our main objectives is taking those issues through the issue council and seeing if we can produce it in game.
Sometimes we get what are called QATRs, QA test requests from devs.
We report on those bugs, we tell developers here's what our findings were and how we got to the bugs, and here's what didn't work and what did work, and try all types of weird and interesting ways of breaking the game.
We're the gap between the players and the developers.
Working alongside the community team to make sure that your feedback gets heard.
There's traditional QA and we have the live QA from the player experience team. Traditional QA takes care of upstream features as they're getting developed, while player experience actually
attack things from a player experience point of view, going through the motions that a player would go through to try to target the issues in a way that dev QA probably wouldn't be able to reproduce.
Some of us take a look in the specializations of the game. Like I go into specialization of medical gameplay, so I could see the ins and outs.
I focus a lot of my time on mining and trading issues. Other members of the team
love to dogfight. Some people love to do FPS combat or missions or bounty hunt. It's all over the place.
So we have a great spread and we kind of get to have fun doing what we are excited to do.
I think the main thing that I would want backers to know about our job and what our team does is that, we're listening to your feedback.
Our team itself is actually quite full of backers.
It kind of helps me put myself in their shoes rather than just look at the data and make a decision based off that data and not necessarily gameplay.
A joke made on the team a lot is that it's easier to learn QA than it is to learn Star Citizen. I already had my pet peeve bugs I wanted fixed. I already knew how the issue council worked.
I think it's important players do know that we see the issues, we see the issue council. We have some automated systems, and sometimes your issue council might say not a bug, but we are tracking it and we are aware of it. We go back manually and open them up when we see that happen, and we do want to address it and get it into the hands of the developers.
No, I'm not the reason your ship got nerfed.
Might be actually responsible for that a little bit. Don't put that in there, please. I know the Ares Ion has been brought up before.
Whenever we're looking to make changes to ships,
it's a very much involved process with a lot of decision makers.
We translate the concerns that players have and bring those into the developer's eyes.
So in essence, we're just the messenger. So.
It wasn't me. It wasn't me.
If there's one thing I want everyone to know is we're all very much passionate about how this project is run because we absolutely believe and love the project.
Being able to interact with a very dedicated community definitely allows us to gain a lot of insight into what the game should be and what the community envisioned the game to be.
In the end, they're the ones who are really supporting the game, and they're the ones who are playing the game, and we're making a game for people to play it and have fun. And I think that's the most important part of it.
People are at the heart of the Star Citizen experience, both from you outside and those within. And in the case of the player experience team, often the same folks transitioning from one to the other. And up next, it's time for another sprint report, so let's get to it. Let's start things off with these new docking areas being created for our high-tech space stations like August Dunlow found in orbit above the planet Crusader. Now, while docking came online a little while ago, several space stations and their respective archetypes still needed this work to enable docking at all the stations of the Stanton system. Next up, let's check in with the Drake Corsair and these gray box images of the mess hall interior, which looks to take some of its cues from what you may already be familiar with from the Drake Caterpillar. There's also the cockpit where pilots spend most of their time, and an up-close look at the dashboard, and finally a look at perspective pilot visibility. We've also got these looks at the Drake Vulture, which is currently rounding out final art phase with some perspective liveries. Let's go ahead and do one of those social media quizzes in the comments. Which one is your favorite? 1, 2, 3, or 4? And from brand new ships to those that have seen better days, let's take another look at the continuing development of our upcoming Reclaimer derelicts. Now, as part of the work our Montreal team is doing, most derelicts will fall into one of 3 categories: old, new, and inhabited. And as part of those inhabited, you can see here preliminary work on housing modules to be found both outside and within the wreckage itself. Tech is also being developed to allow the overall object container that contains the derelict within to pick up biome information from wherever it's dynamically spawned. That means if it's spawned in snow, it gets snow covering, or in this case, ivy and a variety of plant growth. The team is also building up a new library of derelict shaders for various states of decomposition, and when all this is brought together, it'll mean a greater variety of points of interest for you to discover and new mission areas spawned once you accept the job, all dynamically placed and dressed as needed. And before we move on, a short video look at the interior habitable spaces currently being fleshed out. And then lastly, let's take a look at current VFX progress on the handheld salvage beam we discussed on last week's Star Citizen Live with Mike Snowden. Now, while it's important to state that this effect you're seeing here is not final, repeat, not final, and this is a showcase only of the VFX involved, I hope we can all agree, this is still really cool as heck. I mean, just look at this thing, the way the particles are being atomized and sucked up off the hull of the ship. I'm gonna tell you, I just kind of sat and watched this on loop for about 5 minutes straight and was thoroughly mesmerized. In fact, Amanda, let's change up the music and just let this play out for a bit, really get our zen on. I said get our zen on. You're messing with me. There we go. Of course, we'll learn more about salvage, ship-based and handheld, next quarter ahead of its much anticipated introduction to the persistent universe. So what did we learn this week? Well, we learned that it takes quite a bit to keep up with the massive amount of feedback the players provide, and that it's all hands on deck with the developers, the community team, the player relations team, and more to do it. And I'm gonna name drop the customer service team and the concierge team because they deserve a shout out too. That derelicts are shaping up to bring new gameplay opportunities through old and busted spaceships. And that the day when we can leave messages for others in the hull of abandoned spacecraft using the handheld salvage gun are close at hand. What will you write first? For Inside Star Citizen, I'm Jared Huckaby. We'll see you all next week.